Beloved chosen ones, this moment is not random. You did not stumble upon this message by chance. There is a divine orchestration at work, aligning your steps to receive a truth that has the power to shift the very course of your life. A supernatural wealth transfer is on the horizon, but not everyone will partake in it. This is not just about financial gain. It is about stepping into divine purpose, about positioning yourself to be a vessel for kingdom impact. You have felt it in your spirit, the stirring, the unshakable sense that something is shifting, the late nights where your soul wrestles with questions, where you feel the weight of something greater calling you forward. This is the moment where everything begins to make sense. God is moving, and He is searching for those who are ready, those who will steward His blessings with wisdom, those who will walk in faith rather than fear, those who will not hesitate when the doors of abundance swing open. But here is the truth. Not everyone will recognize the signs. Some will see them and step forward, walking in faith into the greatest breakthrough of their lives. Others will hesitate, question, and let the opportunity pass them by. The question is, which one will you be? Have you ever felt like you were standing at the edge of something life-changing, but you weren't sure how to step into it? Have you sensed that God is preparing you for something bigger, yet the obstacles before you seem overwhelming? This is not the time to shrink back. This is the time to step boldly into alignment with what God is doing. Before we begin, I want to hear from you. Have you been feeling this shift in your life? Have you noticed unusual challenges or divine opportunities appearing before you? Comment below 777, because when you declare it in faith, you activate something in the spiritual realm. This is your moment to claim what is already set aside for you. And if you're uncertain, keep watching. By the end of this message, you will know exactly where you stand and how to position yourself for the coming shift. Let's begin. Why God transfers wealth. The wealth transfer that is coming is not just about financial gain. It is about divine realignment. It is about the redistribution of resources from the hands of those who misuse them to the hands of those who will build, uplift, and expand God's kingdom. Proverbs 13 verse 22 declares, "A good man leaves an inheritance to his children's children, but the wealth of the sinner is laid up for the just." This verse is not just a poetic statement. It is a spiritual law. Throughout history, God has always orchestrated wealth transfers to position His people for greater influence, provision, and purpose. He is not just shifting finances. He is shifting power, authority, and influence into the hands of those He has chosen. This means that what is coming is not just about receiving a blessing. It is about stewardship. If you are positioned properly, what is coming to you is not just for you. It is for your assignment, your legacy, and the expansion of God's will on earth. Look at the story of Joseph. He endured betrayal, slavery, and imprisonment, but through it all, God was positioning him for a greater purpose. When the time was right, God transferred the wealth of Egypt into his hands, making him second in command and giving him control over the nation's resources. But why? Because Joseph had the wisdom, obedience, and integrity to handle it. He didn't squander it. He didn't hoard it for selfish gain. He used it to save nations, to preserve His people, and to fulfill prophecy. This is what God is looking for today. He is searching for those who will not let greed corrupt them, who will not be distracted by materialism, but who will see the bigger picture, that divine wealth is a tool for spiritual impact. Many people misunderstand wealth in the kingdom of God. They assume it is simply about personal prosperity, but in reality, God blesses those who are ready to be a blessing. Deuteronomy 8 verse 18 reminds us, "But remember the Lord your God, for it is He who gives you the ability to produce wealth, and so confirms His covenant, which He swore to your ancestors as it is today." The wealth transfer is not random. It is covenantal. It is a fulfillment of God's promises to His people. But make no mistake, not everyone will receive it. Some will disqualify themselves by refusing to walk in obedience, by mishandling the small resources they already have, or by hesitating when God calls them forward. Look at the Israelites in the wilderness. They were shown the promised land, a land flowing with milk and honey, a land of divine provision and supernatural abundance. But an entire generation missed it because they refused to step out in faith. They saw the blessing, but they never possessed it. This is why God tests before He transfers. Before He places something valuable into your hands, He will examine your faithfulness, discipline, and spiritual maturity. This is why some of you have been facing challenges in your finances. It is not to break you, it is to prepare you. It is to reveal what is in your heart. Will you trust God when resources seem low? Will you remain faithful even when the blessing has not yet manifested? Or will you waver in doubt, fearing that God has forgotten you? The truth is, God is watching how you handle what you have now before He releases what is next. If you cannot manage little, you will not manage much. This is why wisdom always comes before wealth. Look at Solomon. When God appeared to him and said, "Ask me for whatever you want, and I will give it to you," Solomon did not ask for riches or power. He asked for wisdom, and because he prioritized wisdom, God gave him both wisdom and wealth, so much that Solomon became the wealthiest king to ever live. The mistake many people make is they desire the wealth before they seek the wisdom to manage it. They want the transfer without the preparation. But here is the reality. God will never give you what you are not ready to handle. This is why some of you have been feeling an unexplainable pull toward learning more about finance, investments, stewardship, and business. It is not random. It is preparation. What is coming is not just about money. It is about resources, strategy, and divine positioning. And the ones who will receive it are not just those who pray for it, but those who prepare for it. So I ask you, are you ready? Have you been positioning yourself through wisdom, obedience, and faithfulness? Or have you been waiting passively, hoping for something to change? Because here's the truth. The transfer is coming. The only question is, will you be ready to receive it? If you believe God is preparing you, declare it in faith. Type, "Lord, prepare me for overflow," in the comments. Because what comes next will determine whether you step into the wealth transfer or watch it pass you by. Let's go deeper. 7 undeniable signs you are positioned for God's wealth transfer. When God is preparing to release a wealth transfer into your life, He does not do it randomly. There are clear, undeniable signs that He is positioning you for something greater. These signs are not just indicators of what's coming. They are tests of readiness. Before God places something valuable in your hands, He ensures that you are spiritually, mentally, and emotionally prepared to handle it. If you have been experiencing these signs, it is not by accident. God is speaking to you, but the question is, will you recognize the signs and take action, or will you let the opportunity pass you by? Let's break down these 7 powerful indicators that God is preparing you for divine increase. Sign number 1, your finances have been tested. One of the first signs that a wealth transfer is near is that your finances have been going through an intense season of testing. Money that once lasted suddenly seems to disappear faster than before. Unexpected expenses arise, financial plans fall apart, and what once felt stable now feels uncertain. This is not just coincidence. This is a divine shaking. Before God transfers wealth, He removes weak foundations. He allows what is unstable to crumble so that He can build something stronger in its place. Look at Job. His wealth vanished overnight, not because God wanted to harm him, but because God was making room for double restoration. Joseph was thrown into a pit before he ruled Egypt. Many of you have been feeling like your finances are under attack, but what if they are actually under reconstruction? If you have been experiencing this kind of financial turbulence, don't panic. Position yourself. Declare in faith, "I trust God's plan." Sign number 2. A divine opportunity seems too big for you. God's blessings do not come in the form of easy victories. They come disguised as challenges that stretch you. Have you recently faced an opportunity that feels too big for you? Maybe a business idea has been placed on your heart, but fear is whispering, "You're not ready." Maybe a new door has opened at work, but doubt is telling you, "You're not qualified." This is a divine test. When God gives increase, He often wraps it in the appearance of impossibility. Think about David. Before he became king, he first had to face a giant. The Israelites were promised a land flowing with milk and honey, but when they arrived, they saw giants and walled cities. Many of them turned back in fear and missed their blessing. How many people today are walking away from the very thing God sent to bless them because it looks too big? If you have recently been given an opportunity that scares you, pay attention. God does not call the qualified, He qualifies the called. Declare in faith, I am ready for my blessing. Sign number 3. People start leaving your life unexpectedly. This is one of the most painful signs, but also one of the most necessary. When God is preparing to bless you, He will remove people who cannot go where He is taking you. This can look like friendships suddenly ending, relationships falling apart, or even family members distancing themselves. It may feel like rejection, but it is actually divine protection. Some people in your life are secretly jealous of your future. Some people would talk you out of your breakthrough. Some people are simply not spiritually aligned with where you are going. Look at Abraham. Before God could bless him, he had to leave his homeland. Look at Joseph. Before he could rule, his own brothers betrayed him. Even Jesus was abandoned by his closest followers before he stepped fully into his divine purpose. If you have been losing people lately, do not grieve what is gone. Recognize the sign. Sign number 4. God asks you to give before you receive. This is where many people fail the test. You pray for increase, and suddenly, God asks you to release something. Maybe He prompts you to sow financially when you feel like you have nothing left. Maybe He asks you to give your time, your talents, or even walk away from something comfortable. This is a principle of the kingdom. Giving comes before abundance. Look at Elijah and the widow. She had only one handful of flour left, enough for one last meal. But when the prophet told her to bake him bread first, she obeyed, and her oil never ran dry. Look at Abraham. God asked him to offer his most precious possession, his son Isaac. But the moment he obeyed, God provided the ram in the thicket. If God has been challenging you to let go of something, do not resist. He is not taking from you, He is positioning you for more. Declare in faith, I trust God's provision. Sign number 5. You feel an unshakable urge to gain wisdom about wealth. God never releases increase without instruction. If you have recently found yourself drawn to learning more about financial stewardship, investing, business, or generational wealth, this is not random. God is preparing you. Before Solomon became the wealthiest king in history, what did he ask for? Wisdom. Because he prioritized wisdom over riches, God gave him both. The reason many people never receive wealth transfers is because God will not bless what you are not prepared to handle. If you have suddenly found yourself making plans, seeking knowledge, and feeling the need to prepare, this is a sign. Sign number 6. Supernatural confirmations and divine alignments keep appearing. When God is moving, He aligns things with divine precision. Doors that have been closed for years suddenly open. Resources, connections, and opportunities appear at the exact right time. It feels like the pieces of a puzzle are coming together without your effort. This is not luck, this is divine orchestration. Look at Joseph. He went from prisoner to ruler overnight. That was not by accident, that was a divine setup. If you have been experiencing sudden, supernatural alignments, this is a sign that your breakthrough is near. Sign number 7. The enemy attacks hardest right before breakthrough. Right before the greatest blessings, there is always intense spiritual warfare. You feel overwhelming resistance. Everything in your spirit tells you that change is coming. But suddenly obstacles appear. People start doubting you. Your emotions feel heavier, and the temptation to quit becomes stronger. This is the final test. Look at Moses. He stood before the Red Sea, trapped, just before Israel's greatest deliverance. Look at Daniel. He was thrown into the lion's den just before his elevation. Look at Jesus. He faced the cross before the resurrection. If you are feeling this level of pressure, it means you are closer than you think. Declare, I will not turn back. If you have experienced even one of these signs, God is speaking to you. This is not random. This is confirmation that you are being positioned for divine increase. But remember, knowing the signs is not enough, you must act. So I ask you, will you step forward in faith, or will you let fear hold you back? The final warning, don't miss your moment. Chosen one, listen carefully. This moment will not last forever. When God moves, He moves within an appointed time, and those who are not positioned will miss it. Throughout history, God has extended opportunities for his people to step into divine abundance, but not everyone had the faith to seize the moment. Look at the Israelites. God had promised them the land of milk and honey, a land that was already prepared for them. They saw it with their own eyes. They heard the reports of its fruitfulness. Yet when the time came to move forward, they hesitated. Fear gripped them. They focused on the giants instead of God's promise. And because of their unbelief, an entire generation missed out. They wandered the wilderness for 40 years, dying without ever touching what was meant to be theirs. Do you understand the weight of this? It wasn't that the promise wasn't real. It was that they refused to step into it. And today, many are making the same mistake. They see the signs, they hear the call, but instead of acting, they wait for more confirmation, more certainty, more clarity. And in the process, they let the moment pass them by. This is why Jesus warned in Luke 19 verse 44 that some people would miss their visitation. He said, "You did not recognize the time of God's coming to you." There is a time-sensitive nature to divine movements. God is not going to wait forever. When he moves, he is looking for those who are ready, those who are watching, those who will move in obedience. The truth is, many people who are praying for financial breakthrough will never receive it, not because God didn't want to bless them, but because they refused to take action when the window was open. They wanted the blessing, but they weren't willing to walk in obedience, to stretch their faith, to prepare themselves for what was coming. And let me tell you something, the enemy knows this. He cannot stop God's blessings from coming, but he can distract you, delay you, and make you hesitate long enough to miss them. Some of you have felt this battle in your spirit. Every time you get close to a breakthrough, you start second-guessing yourself. You feel overwhelmed, discouraged, even afraid. That is not an accident. That is a strategy of the enemy. If he can't take your blessing, he will try to convince you to walk away from it. Think about the rich young ruler in Mark 10 verses 17 to 22. He stood face to face with Jesus himself, the source of all true wealth. He had a chance to step into something greater than earthly riches, but when Jesus told him to release what he had and follow him, he walked away sorrowful. Do you see what happened? He was right there in the presence of divine opportunity, and yet he chose his comfort over his calling. The same thing is happening today. People are being shown the signs. They feel the stirring in their spirit. They hear the message. But when it comes time to act in faith, to release, to trust, to step forward, they hesitate, and in their hesitation, they forfeit the very thing they were praying for. Let me make this clear. God will not force you into your blessing. He will not drag you into your purpose. He will not make you accept a wealth transfer that you are not prepared to receive. He will give you the opportunity, but you must take the step. This is why Jesus told Peter to step out of the boat before he walked on water. Peter had to move first. This is why God told Noah to build the ark before the flood came. Noah had to prepare first. This is why the priests in Joshua 3 had to step into the Jordan River before the waters parted. They had to act in faith first. And today, God is saying the same thing to you. You must move. You must step forward in faith. I need you to understand this. God is transferring resources, influence, and opportunities into the hands of those who are positioned. But if you are waiting for absolute certainty before you act, you will miss it. If you are waiting for things to be perfect, you will watch someone else step into the very thing that was meant for you. The Bible says in Ecclesiastes 11 verse 4, "Whoever watches the wind will not plant. Whoever looks at the clouds will not reap." In other words, if you keep waiting for the perfect moment, you will never move. Some of you are right at the edge of what God has for you, but you are letting fear, doubt, and overthinking keep you paralyzed. And here's the reality. If you don't take action, someone else will. When Esther hesitated to step into her calling, Mordecai told her, "If you remain silent at this time, relief and deliverance for the Jews will arise from another place." Esther 4 verse 14. In other words, if you don't step into what God has prepared, He will raise someone else to do it. The opportunity will not be lost, but you might be the one who misses it. So, I ask you now, are you ready to move? Are you willing to step forward, even when it feels uncomfortable? Are you ready to prepare, to position yourself, to align with what God is doing? This is not the time to hesitate. This is the time to act. If you believe God is calling you to something greater, declare it right now. Comment below and say, "I will not miss my moment," because the transfer is happening now, and those who recognize the season will walk into the blessing. But those who delay will watch it pass them by. The choice is yours. Will you step forward in faith, or will you let hesitation rob you of what God has already prepared? How to position yourself for the transfer. The wealth transfer is not coming to just anyone. It is not falling into the laps of those who are unprepared, passive, or hesitant. It is coming to those who are positioned, those who have aligned themselves with God's principles, those who have prepared their hearts, minds, and hands to receive it. The truth is, many people pray for blessings, but they fail to position themselves for what they are asking for. They want increase, but they are not faithful with what they already have. They want doors to open, but they have not prepared to walk through them. They want financial breakthrough, but they have not developed the wisdom, discipline, and faith to steward it properly. But let me tell you this, God does not bless disorganization. God does not release increase into hands that will waste it. God will not pour abundance into vessels that are leaking. So, if you are serious about stepping into this divine transfer, you must take action. You must align yourself spiritually, mentally, and practically. Let's break down how to do that. 1. Obedience. Walk in alignment with God's instructions. The first key to positioning yourself for the transfer is obedience. God will not release wealth into the hands of those who refuse to follow His direction. Many people miss their blessing not because it wasn't available, but because they ignored the instructions that came before it. Look at Noah. He had to build the ark before the flood came. Look at Abraham. He had to leave his homeland before God revealed the promised land. Look at Peter. He had to step out of the boat before he could walk on water. Every great transfer in the Bible required a step of obedience first. Some of you have been sensing God telling you to move, to shift, to let go of something, to start something, to step into something new, but you have been delaying. You have been asking for more confirmation when God has already spoken. Delayed obedience is still disobedience. If you want to be in position, you must do what God is telling you to do, even when it doesn't make sense. 2. Preparation. Make room for the blessing before it arrives. One of the biggest reasons people miss their wealth transfer is they do not prepare. They assume that when the blessing comes, they will figure it out then. But the truth is, if you are not ready before the opportunity arrives, you will not be able to hold on to it. Look at Joseph. Before he was placed in charge of Egypt's wealth, he had already developed the skills of leadership, administration, and stewardship. He didn't wait until he was promoted to learn how to manage resources. He was already prepared. This is why Proverbs 21 verse 5 says, "The plans of the diligent lead to profit, as surely as haste leads to poverty." Some of you are praying for financial overflow, but you have not prepared a system to manage increase. If God were to bless you tomorrow, would you know what to do with it? Would you steward it wisely, or would it slip through your hands? If you are serious about this transfer, start educating yourself on financial principles. Start budgeting, saving, investing, and developing skills that will allow you to multiply what God gives you. Start preparing now so that when the blessing arrives, you are ready to handle it. 3. Faith-based decision-making. Move with confidence in God's plan. Faith is not just believing, it is moving. It is taking steps before you see the full picture. Hebrews 11 verse 6 says, "Without faith, it is impossible to please God." This means that every major breakthrough requires faith. Many people are waiting until everything is perfect before they move. They want to see every detail lined up, every risk eliminated, every outcome guaranteed. But if you wait for everything to be certain, you will never move. Look at Esther. She had to step forward in faith to save her people, even though it meant risking her life. Look at the widow of Zarephath. She had to give her last meal before she saw her miracle. Look at Peter. He had to step onto the water before he experienced the supernatural. Faith requires action. Many of you have been sensing that it is time to move, but fear has been keeping you stuck. You have been second-guessing, overthinking, waiting for the right moment. Let me tell you something, the right moment is when God speaks. If you feel Him nudging you, it's time to act. Stop letting fear hold you back. Stop talking yourself out of what God has already confirmed. Stop asking for another sign when the signs are already all around you. 4. Spiritual alignment. Stay connected to the source of the blessing. One of the biggest mistakes people make after receiving a financial breakthrough is that they disconnect from God. They get blessed and suddenly they stop praying, they stop seeking, they stop depending on God. But hear me, if the blessing pulls you away from God, it was not a blessing, it was a test. Deuteronomy 8 verse 18 reminds us, "But remember the Lord your God, for it is He who gives you the ability to produce wealth." If you want to sustain what God is about to release, you must stay connected to the source. Do not let money become an idol. Do not let success pull you away from intimacy with God. Remain humble. Remain faithful. Keep seeking Him first. Because here's the truth, when you put God first, everything else falls into place. 5. Bold action. Take the first step without hesitation. Positioning is not passive, it requires movement. Too many people are waiting for God to drop blessings into their hands, when God is waiting for them to take the first step. Every single example of divine wealth transfer in the Bible required action. The Israelites had to march around Jericho before the walls fell. The woman with the issue of blood had to push through the crowd to touch Jesus' garment. The fishermen had to cast their nets into the deep before they received a supernatural catch. The pattern is clear, faith without works is dead. So if you believe that God is preparing you for greater, start moving in that direction. Do what He is calling you to do. Take the class. Make the investment. Start the business. Apply for the opportunity. Step forward in faith. The transfer is happening, but only those who are prepared will receive it. Many will see the opportunity but hesitate. Many will sense the shift but do nothing. And in the end, only those who position themselves properly will walk into the fullness of God's promise. So I ask you, will you be one of them? Will you prepare? Will you align? Will you obey? Or will you let the moment pass you by? The choice is yours. If you are ready to step into this season of divine abundance, declare it one last time, I am positioned and ready, because God is moving, and those who move with Him will never lack. This is your time, don't miss it. If this message has confirmed something in your spirit, don't stop here. The next step is to stay connected, stay equipped, and continue growing in wisdom and faith. Make sure you subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications so you never miss a message that could shift your destiny. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it, because when we come together in faith, we amplify the move of God. And if you're ready to go even deeper into how to sustain God's blessings and position yourself for long-term spiritual and financial breakthrough,